Welcome to the Lost Legends. This is Adam Jones, and today we're going to talk about a very real, current mystery that you can go see in South Texas right now. Today we're talking about the Marfa Lights. Now this episode is obviously a departure from how I usually run this show. I like to talk about the past. I like to talk about forgotten stories from history and weird things that people don't always know about. But this one's different. The Marfa Lights are a current and ongoing mystery. And that's something I couldn't resist. Even though I like to talk about the past, this was my chance to see something for myself. If you're not familiar with them, the Marfa Lights are a phenomena that's been seen in the sky near the city of Marfa for a long time. There's not a lot of documentation about the Marfa Lights from the past, and that's not surprising. Writing things down and keeping historical records is actually very expensive, at least in the past it was. For example, there's an old story of a cowboy who says he looked out and saw these Marfa Lights, and he first thought they were campfires from local Apaches, and then discovered that they were too high for that. This story might be true. Then again, he didn't write it down anywhere. We don't have what we call a primary document, a real good record of it from the past. So it's kind of hearsay. But I'm not surprised, like I said, that it's not written down anywhere. I'm not surprised we lack a historical primary document, because who would have had time and money to write down a story like that? Fortunately, we don't need historical documents because we can go look at the Marfa Lights right now. They're very accessible. They're somewhat reliable. People see them all the time. So even though we don't have records stretching out into the past, we have at least 100 years of stories. And because it's such a regular phenomena, such a recurring phenomena, we have to assume they've been going on for a long time. Something you should know is that the Marfa Lights are incredibly divisive. People say you should not talk about politics or religion in public, and I'm going to say that you shouldn't talk about politics, religion, or the Marfa Lights. People get really upset. On one end, you've got people who attach wild theories to the lights. It's usually aliens. In fact, I think it's always aliens. Surely these lights are evidence of intelligent creatures who are wandering around in the Texas desert. And the theories get pretty wild. I'm not going to go into it now. I think you can imagine. I think you've heard people come up with crazy UFO theories, and lots of them are attached to the Marfa Lights. And to be honest, it's a little bit annoying, because there's no evidence of anything like that. And on the other end are the skeptics. But when you talk about the Marfa Lights, the skeptics have a habit of getting pretty condescending. I'm going to talk about that a little more. But it's sort of a war zone. Just mentioning the Marfa Lights makes people upset. Their blood kind of boils because they're used to an argument. They assume that they've stepped into an argument as soon as you say those words. On the other side are the skeptics, but not just skeptics. When people talk about the Marfa Lights, they get really angry. Some of them are always condescending. Some of them say there's no such thing. It's just the planet Venus. It's just some people who are imagining things. And they really do get very condescending about it. And those people are really missing out, because there's something to see in South Texas, I promise. To get there, it's not easy. Marfa is 8 hours from the nearest big city, and most people who see it have to drive for days to get there. On the way, I was happy to stop at the last Bennigan's in Texas. They used to be everywhere, so that was probably my last time to eat at a Bennigan's. A little further, and we get to a city called Midland. Midland is famous because that's where baby Jessica fell in a well when I was a child. A Roy Orbison Museum is not far away. And if you do head that way, you get to the city of Odessa, and you really need to stop there because the people of the University of Texas built a perfect replica of Stonehenge. One of the most amazing roadside attractions I've ever seen. It is a perfect replica of Stonehenge made of limestone slabs from the Permian Basin nearby. It even includes the smaller stones that kind of litter the outside of Stonehenge. Now, it takes about as long to drive there as it does to fly over to England, so it may not actually be closer, but for a lot of people, it's easier to go to Odessa, Texas than it is to go to England. It's partly worth stopping just because Stonehenge is such a neat place, and even a replica is a neat place to go. But you'll also be impressed by the craftsmanship, by how well this thing was put together. Leaving Odessa, you've still got a couple of hours drive to get to Marfa, and that's where the countryside really changes. and things start to look different. It's hard to explain South Texas to someone who hasn't been there. It's got a lot of mountains, but it's also incredibly flat. I know that might sound contradictory. It's like an alien world. It is so flat and smooth. Everywhere you look, you can see for miles and miles. You see counties and counties away. It is breathtaking. I've never seen anything like that. I'm from the country, even though I live in a big city today. And in the country, things get darker, there's fewer buildings, the stars are brighter, but nothing I've ever seen in the countryside was anything like South Texas. And I've been to other deserts. I've been to other barren landscapes in the world. I've never seen anything like South Texas. And it gets really weird at night. Because when you shine a light from your headlights, the light goes on and on and on. It just keeps on going. And if you hit something with your lights, if your lights hit a rock or something, it makes a shadow. The shadow will go on longer than you're accustomed to. Even moonlight and starlight is brighter than any place I've been, and it makes unusual shadows, and things just look different. Like I said, it might be a little hard to explain, but when you're standing out there in that expansive, unending flatland, the world looks different than any place you've been, and light especially has a different way of traveling out there. Along the way, my wife and I met a few interesting people. Not far outside of Odessa, we had coffee, and someone approached us to talk to us about the Marfa Lights. We didn't ask them about the lights. This is very important. We didn't bring it up. They brought it up. They came up to us and asked if we were going to see the lights. And before we could answer, this young man began to speak very quickly, saying, "Don't listen to what they say. It's aliens." He told us that the lights were an alien intelligence. He said one time there was an Air Force base out there, and they had to shut down the base because the alien lights were chasing the planes around. He had a few other theories that I didn't take very seriously. It's true there was an Air Force base, but there's no evidence that the lights were chasing the planes around. He said a lot of things that were hard to take seriously, but what was interesting to me is how angry he was. Now remember, I hadn't said anything. In fact, I'd almost not spoken at all. He approached us and wanted to talk, very friendly guy. But as soon as he thought about the Marfa Lights, he got upset. Maybe he's accustomed to getting into online arguments about it, but he wanted to fight. He was defending his theories. His hands were waving everywhere, and his voice got louder and louder. Eventually, he exhausted the subject and calmed down, and we said our goodbyes. But it was interesting to see this guy because he really represents one big part of the conversation. It wasn't long after this, though, that we met someone from the other side. We stopped for some food, and guys, I can't remember how many times friendly people just wanted to talk to us. So many friendly people out there. And somebody asked us if we were in town for the Perseids meteor shower. This person had come to Marfa to look at the stars, to watch the meteor shower, and to visit the nearby McDonald Observatory, which is a great place to visit. And I said to him, "Are you planning to look at the Marfa Lights while you're here?" And that was the wrong thing to say. He pushed himself away, he wouldn't look at me, and he said, kind of sheepishly, kind of defensive, "You know it's just headlights, right? It's just car headlights." Now I know what he's talking about. The leading theory is that car headlights are somehow causing people to see things. People are at the viewing area at Marfa, a car in the distance shines its headlights, and because light travels strangely out there, people see the headlights and think it's something mysterious. And I said, "Well, I've heard that. I just thought I'd go see it for myself." And he said, "It's headlights. It's car headlights." He was very, very serious. And then he got away from me as fast as he could. It was like if you've ever told someone that your politics were different than them, or that you didn't like their favorite movie, and they immediately wanted nothing to do with you. And all I said was, "Do you want to go look at the lights? Are you interested in seeing the Marfa Lights while you're out here? Marfa's a hard place to get to. You may as well look while you're out there. You're not going to get a lot of chances." And it made him furious that I asked him that. Well, after hearing from the skeptics, after hearing from the true believers, I was ready to find out for myself. I promise I saw something, and I promise I'm going to tell you all about it next time on The Lost Legends.